Spring is here, which means now is the time to save during spring outdoor power deals at the Home Depot. Power through cleanup with the Ryobi 18-volt ONE+ trimmer and blower combo kit, designed to deliver more runtime, more speed, and maximum performance. Then level up your yard work and expand your Ryobi lineup with the expanded edger or pruning saw, included at no extra cost when you buy the Ryobi combo kit. Shop spring outdoor power deals for 7 days at the Home Depot, now through April 29th.
Having the right people in your corner for life's biggest milestones makes all the difference. Like a friend who's there when you're house hunting or checking out a new ride, State Farm is there too, helping you choose the coverage you need. With a State Farm agent, you know someone is there to help you along the way. And with so many coverage options, it's nice knowing you have help choosing a plan that fits your needs, so you can continue celebrating all of life's milestones. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Joining us now, CBS Sports, one of the best when it comes down to breaking the NFL Draft. Josh Edwards from CBS right here on The Zone. Josh, how you doing?
Doing well. I'm excited for the festivities tonight just because I don't know what's going to happen, and I think that's a little bit more exciting than what we've had in recent years. So as strange as it sounds, without having those true all-pro types at the top of the draft, I'm very excited.
So where does the drama begin for you? Is it at number 2 or is it a little bit later?
I wouldn't call number 2 overall necessarily drama because one way or another it's going to be an edge rusher, whether that's Arvell Reese from Ohio State or David Bailey from Texas Tech. But at the same time, right after that pick is Arizona at number 3 overall, and there's already been some smoke that they could trade out of that pick. And that's kind of the turning point for me in the first round, at least the top 10 overall, because if a team comes up and takes a defensive player and Jeremiah Love is, still available, I think that could possibly lead to 2 things. One, I think it could start a run on offensive tackles once we get into the back half of the top 10 overall, because there's a lot of teams that need players at that position. So then we're talking about, a lot of those offensive tackles that we've talked about at the end of round 1 now possibly being moved up the board. And 2, if Love is not taken top 5 overall, then there's a real opportunity for a team to trade up. We've looked at Dallas as a team that could trade up for a defensive player. Might the Rams be enticed as they're, historically inclined to be more aggressive? So I think it's going to be an exciting first round.
Josh, would you take Bailey or a Reese, given that chance, if you're setting at 2?
I would personally take Arvell Reese, but my job is not on the line, which has kind of been the company line that I've used throughout this process. If I look at the Jets and kind of where they are currently, there's a little bit of pressure on Aaron Glenn to perform this upcoming season. So are you more comfortable taking a player like David Bailey, who is more ready to contribute immediately in the role that you have designed for him? Or do you take the more high upside player like Reese, who played off ball? He played this edge rusher role for Ohio State, and now you're kind of transitioning him to a position that he doesn't necessarily have as much experience playing. I think Reese is the higher upside player, but I can also understand a line of thinking where the Jets just need somebody to be that double in the gap for them this season that, could possibly allow them to be the ones that make those 3 selections in the first round next year. So I understand the line of thinking for both, but me personally, I would take Reese.
So for so long in the NFL, people have always looked at running back as a value position where it's like, okay, do we really want to spend a lot of draft equity on a guy that we might burn through in 4 or 5 years? Ashton Genty changed that a little bit last year, going 6 overall. Jeremiah Love could very well be a top 5 pick. Maybe he goes 3 to Arizona. Are running backs and high draft picks being used on running backs? Is that starting to make a return to the NFL?
It's definitely making a return. Whether it's the right decision or not, I think could be argued for this reason. I've always been of the mindset that running back is kind of the cherry on top. If you feel like you have a roster that is already built to contend or at least perform better than the past season, then drop the running back in. I think you have to have your offensive line kind of solidified before you take on that player, because once you take a running back, the clock starts ticking for that player. they've only got so many career snaps. So if you waste the first 2 years of their career and you're not competitive, then you're talking about that player being paid like a top 6, top 7 running back in the NFL in years 3, 4, and 5 of their contract. And you're going to have to pay them right around the corner. So, if you waste those first 2 years on a running back, I just don't think you're getting the value that you really look to achieve in the top 10 overall. So, if a team has a roster that is ready to compete now, running back is great. But if you're a team that is still a year or two away, I think it's a luxury pick that you just cannot afford to make.
We're excited. We got obviously 2 University of Utah players that look to be going in the first round tonight. I guess where do you feel like Lomu will go? I've seen him as high as 6, and I've seen him, lower, kind of down near 10, 11. Where do you feel like he'll go? And then where do you feel like may be the best place for him?
I would love to see him end up in San Francisco for 2 reasons. One, he would have the luxury of sitting and waiting behind Trent Williams for possibly a year, learning from an all-pro caliber player, someone who has played the position at a very high level. I think that's an invaluable graduate-level experience that most offensive linemen are not afforded. At the same time, I also think it's a great scheme fit for him because he's more athletic. He's somebody that thrives moving in space, so I think he would be a good fit for the scheme that Kyle Shanahan deploys. It's going to be really exciting for both of those Utah guys. I think there's a chance that Fano could be the first offensive lineman drafted, with Francis Maui-Noah from Miami being a player that, has some concerns with medicals late in the process. And then that whole Fano family, Logan's going to hear his name at some point too, in all likelihood. They've, got a rich history there with the Utes. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited if you're a Utah fan.
You look at I was going back and I referenced this earlier in the show. George Payton, the general manager of the Broncos, made reference to why he signed a guy as an undrafted free agent after last year's draft that came from the University of Utah. And he said, these Utes have been pretty good to us, and we like the system they come from, and they feel like they're more NFL ready. Are there certain schools that just seem to produce better NFL players than others? Yeah,
without a doubt. And I think sometimes it varies positionally. There's certain schools where you just know they're being taught the right way. Fresno State is not a big school, but they've done pretty well producing defensive backs. Same with San Diego State. Now a lot of those guys are moving up through the transfer portal. But, yeah, there's definitely something that can be said for a program that operates in a professional way. Their players are held to a certain level, a certain standard. There's a level of accountability where you take that player, you bring him onto your NFL team, and you just kind of know he's going to do what he's supposed to do. I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think, there's a reason that some teams kind of stay with certain schools. You look at Philadelphia. I mean, they historically draft a lot of Georgia players because those players have a standard. They kind of know what it's like playing in the NFL before they get to the NFL. And Utah has been one of those programs. Those day 2, day 3 picks that, have been taken throughout the years, you typically get excess value because of the way that they're coached and developed there at Utah.
Obviously, the first pick is not going to be any kind of surprise. Where are you on the ability for Fernando Mendoza to change the game with the Raiders?
Yeah, I always feel bad for him because for being the number 1 overall pick, we've just kind of put it aside for a couple of months. Is this sort of known quantity? But he's a really gifted player. He's maybe not as talented as a Caleb Williams or a Drake May that we've seen in recent years, but he's a player that I think if you put the right supporting cast around him, he could be that top 10 overall type quarterback that is able to help your team achieve higher goals. I don't know that he's going to be able to do that himself, at least consistently. And I think that's why it's so important for Las Vegas to continue what they've already started doing, which is supporting that young player, bringing in Kirk Cousins so he doesn't have to start immediately, bringing in Tyler Linderbaum, the free agent center, so he doesn't have to handle, the blocking adjustments at the line of scrimmage, take some of the pressure off of his plate. So you have to continue to support him with good players. But I think in that system, if he is given enough players to throw the ball to, and Ashton Genty is given room to run, I think that is an offense that could really blossom quickly. And I don't foresee Mendoza being that consistent top 5 quarterback the way that Mahomes and Josh Allen and some other players of that nature are. But in the right situation, I do think that he could be that top 10 quarterback that gives you enough to where you're capable of competing for a Super Bowl if you've done the other requisite stuff to build that kind of a roster.
Where are your thoughts on Jack Kelly? Tremendous college linebacker. Sometimes that doesn't always translate to the NFL. Seemed like he put up good numbers in the offseason. Where do you think he'll go in the draft if he does go?
Spring is in the air, which means now is the time to save during spring outdoor power deals at the Home Depot. Make cleanup easier when you go cordless with the Milwaukee M18 string trimmer, designed to deliver more runtime, more speed, and maximum performance. Then grab a select Milwaukee fuel attachment, like the pole saw, edger, or brush cutter, included at no extra cost when you buy the Milwaukee M18 string trimmer. Shop 7 days of spring outdoor power deals at the Home Depot, now through April 29th.
I'm kind of leaning day 3 at this point. He's tough, he's versatile. So I do think that he will hear his name called at some point, because I think there's some special teams value at the very least, which is important for NFL teams as you get to that stage of the NFL draft. Those depth pieces on your roster have to have the capability to contribute in other ways. And I think just the way that he approaches the game, he's somebody that is going to be willing to do whatever it takes to make an NFL roster.
How about what does the wide receiver situation look like this year? Is this a deep draft for wide receivers?
It's a deep draft. We may not have, the number 1 type receivers at the top that we've seen in recent years with, Malik Neighbors and Jamar Chase, but I think there's a couple of very good players that could possibly be that. Carnell Tate from Ohio State, Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. I think those guys are both capable of being wide receiver 1s at the next level. But I love the depth of this wide receiver class. I think you can get starters well into day 2, into day 3, and certainly find players that, fit a specific skill set that you're looking for. I think there's contributors well into day 3 of this year's draft. So I think it's an exciting opportunity for teams to kind of restock the cupboard, so to speak, with a really deep wide receiver class. And I'm really curious to kind of break down some of the fits as we get through this process and just kind of see where players land.
All right, so I'm going to give you a name, and you tell me if I'm off base on this, because there's a guy that I think when we reshuffle the deck chairs in 3 or 4 years and they do this redraft of the 2026 draft, I think this guy will be a top 3 pick. Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State.
Yeah, I love Caleb Downs. I think he's got very little bust potential. The criticism to this point has been positional value. He plays a position that is not historically taken that high. He doesn't test off the charts athletically, but we've seen the NFL make this mistake so many times in the past where you take a player, you overthink a player, right? It happened with Brian Branch. It's happened with some other guys, specifically at the safety position. And you just have to be – there's so much to be said for the mental acumen of playing the safety position. And when you watch him play, he plays the game a half step quicker than anybody else because he's put in the work. He knows what he's seeing on the other side of the ball. He anticipates routes well. He breaks downhill fast. So I could absolutely see him being one of those top players that we look back on in 3 or 5 years and say, wow, why didn't he go top 5 overall if the Giants were to bypass him? I think that's the team that we're kind of looking for to possibly take him off the board early tonight. You look at John Harbaugh and his history, that makes a lot of sense. But if he were to slip for, the criticisms that we've heard throughout this process, I think it would be a mistake, and I think we would realize that pretty quickly.
Of the franchises out there, what team going into tonight really has a chance to make a jump? They're right there, but with the draft, and with a good draft, can put them, a little bit more in contention from your perspective.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I think the Jets have a real opportunity, but I also don't think that they're one draft away. Yeah, exactly. So it might be kind of a cop-out, but I think the Rams, they're already so close. They were so close in the NFC Championship this past year. They fell a little bit short, of course, to the eventual Super Bowl champions. That's probably a little bit of a layup, but I think that they've been so aggressive this offseason addressing some of their needs. They're really just a piece or two away from having this roster that you sit back and you look at and you say, I just can't find a weakness with this team other than Matthew Stafford's health. If he's able to stay healthy, I think they're going to be right there in the mix for the NFC yet again. So they're in a rare opportunity right now to pick number 13 overall. They don't often find themselves in this position, but I would look at them. And I wanted to say the Ravens as well, but that's not necessarily – that's kind of cherry picking as well. And I think they're probably more likely to take an interior offensive lineman, which, how much is that really going to move the needle towards your championship goals? But if they go out and they get like a Kenyon Sadiq or somebody like that can be moved around and used on offense, then they would also be, a possible answer to that question.
Josh Edwards, NFL Draft Guru, CBS Sports, kind enough to join us here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Does Ty Simpson hear his name called in the first round?
I'm inclined to say yes, but I'm not as convicted as some other people in the media. There's some people that you listen to, and they're very convinced that he's going to be taken in the first round, and I've just had a hard time finding that team if it's not the Cardinals. I can make a case for the Steelers, maybe even the Buccaneers if they're not sold on Baker Mayfield long term, but just my gut feeling tells me that it's the Cardinals, and whether or not he gets into the first round is kind of dependent on whether they feel the need to move up to get that fifth-year option, which is a scenario we saw play out last year with the Giants moving up from the second round into the first round to take Jackson Dart. That's where we saw the second quarterback come off last year, and then the third went number 40 overall to the Saints, Tyler Shuck. So that's kind of the range that I foresee for Ty Simpson tonight. And I don't know what the markets are suggesting right now, but I think probably even lines is fair game.
So overall, do you get the vibe that it's going to be a crazy first round, that there's going to be a lot of movement? Do you think it's chalk? How do you think? And again, we're not going to hold you to this, but just you looking into the crystal ball, how you think tonight goes? Because it's not just about the drafts; it's about the trades and the shuffling around that really gets people fired up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think exciting is in the eye of the beholder, and if that's the criteria is moving around to secure a player through a trade, I think that it is going to be an exciting first round. I think people are going to enjoy it. It's not going to deliver the, $100 names, the Caleb Williamses, the, some of those other star players that we've seen in recent years. But I really do think this is a draft where we're going to see a lot of trade movement, and we're going to see teams get a lot better this week. And, we're in an era where teams are less afraid to make aggressive moves. And I think we're probably going to see that play out tonight as well.
What do you see out of Kansas City, real quick? What do they go to address tonight at 9?
I've always said that given this rare opportunity, they don't often find themselves in a position to pick top 10 overall. I think you have to come away from this draft with a premium position, whether that's your right tackle of the future, a wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes. I just really think they need to get some young talent to kind of revitalize that roster. So those are the two directions that I've had them going to this point. I could also see them taking edge rusher, a cornerback if the right player is there. But I really do think that it's going to be one of those premium positions on offense.
Josh, appreciate your time, man. Enjoy the draft, and should be a fun one. Hopefully we do see some fireworks.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you for having me.
There he is, Josh Edwards, NFL Draft Guru, breaking it down. CBS Sports.
Make game day yours. Tickets, food and drinks, stats, and streaming. Everything you need is in the Utah Mammoth app. Download today and make game night easy. Download on both Android and iPhone. Just top.